Hi friends, I'd like to welcome you all for today's lesson. We are introducing the new topic, which is a urinary system in anatomy and physiology. This system, it is also said to be the renal system or sometimes the excretory system because of its physiological mechanism. Pay attention to understand this topic. So, first thing that you need to understand, having looked at being anatomy and physiology, we have to understand the function of this urinary system that you are going to talk about. So in this case, first thing that you need to understand is that the urinary system is actually the system that is essential in the composition of body fluids and also maintaining these fluids and electrolytes within the normal limits in the body. And another aspect of this function of the urinary system, it is also to get rid of the waste products that actually accumulates in the body throughout the cellular metabolism that takes place in the body through the process of excretion. That's why sometimes it is said to be excretory system. So if you've noticed, first thing we talked about it being the system that regulates the body fluids and the electrolytes within normal limits. Not only does it do that, but also plays the function in the excretion or the elimination of the waste products that actually accumulates within the body. So you're saying that although this system, it is the major system of excretion, there are other systems that actually aids in the elimination of waste products. For example, we've got in the respiratory system, we've got the lungs that are essential in the excretion of carbon dioxide and some amount of air as exhalation is taking place. And we also have the skin in the integumentary system, which actually excretes some electrolytes and other waste products that are produced through the cells in form of the sweat through the sweat gland. But having all these systems playing their function in the excretory system, but still our major system in the body, it is actually the urinary system that plays the function of getting rid of the metabolic waste products. Another system that actually helps, or rather some organs apart from the kidney as being the primary organ, the renal system, also have the liver and the intestines that actually excretes the bile pigment that is actually formed from the liver due to the fact of the digestive system and also the destruction of the hemoglobin, which is the red pigment with red blood cells. So all these are actually some of the organs that aids in the elimination of metabolic waste from the body. So we're saying that the urinary system, it actually maintains the fluids within the appropriate volumes, and also the excess of fluids that may not still be needed in the body, they get to be excreted or eliminated from the body through the formation of urine. And another aspect, so we've talked about this though. So we're saying that also it maintains the concentration of various electrolytes in the body fluids, and also maintain the normal potential hydrogen of the blood. So we're going to talk about some of the electrolytes actually that gets to be maintained through the urinary system. Specifically, we're going to talk about the aldosterone, or rather some electrolytes like sodium, the potassium, all those electrolytes, they actually gets to be maintained within normal limits by this system. And also see how the blood's pH is maintained by the process of this urinary system. So we are saying that apart from those regulations that we have talked about, the urinary system has also an important function in the erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis in this case is just the production of red blood cells. Why are we saying that it actually aids in the production of red blood cells? Because it is in the kidney where erythropoietin, which is the hormone that stimulates the production of red blood cells, gets to be secreted from. And also the urinary system plays the role in maintaining the normal blood pressure by secreting the enzyme renin. This enzyme renin, it has the effect of actually working on the angiotensinogen plasma protein that is found within the blood, and that actually activates the angiotensin 1 from the liver into angiotensin 2. That actually leads about a vasoconstriction and also the retention of sodium that is going to increase the volume of blood, hence maintaining the blood pressure. Now, what are some of the organs that are related to this system? Remember, anatomy and physiology, for it to be made a system, for us to come up with a system, it is actually the group of organs that are associated together in order to play a specific function. It starts with the cells, which forms the tissues. The tissues form the organs now forms the system. And in this case, we are saying that it's urinary system. It being a system, the associated organs. And these are the organs that we want to talk about. First, we are going to start with the kidney, the ureters, urinary bladder, and the urethra. These are the major organs of the urinary system. So we're saying that the kidney form the urine and account for the other functions attributed to the urinary system. And the ureters, they are just the passage of the urine that is formed from the kidney and passed to the urinary bladder, which acts as a temporary reservoir of the urine. And these are the structures that we have talked about. These are what you are going to go by. So we can see this is the excretory system or the urinary diagram that is showing the organs that are associated with the urinary system. We can see in between we've got the blood vessels, which is the aorta and the vena cava. We also have two kidneys inside, which are lateral to the middle line or rather the vertebral column. And we also have the ureters that are actually descending from the kidneys, propelling their contents to the temporary storage, which is the urinary bladder. And after the urinary bladder, we've got the urethra, which acts as the exit point of the urine outside the body. Okay, so we are going to start with looking at the kidney at large as being one of the organs of the urinary system. So first thing that you need to understand is that the kidney is actually not only the organ of urinary system, but the primary organ of a urinary system, which has the functional unity of the nephron. But before we talk about the nephron, let's talk about the structure of the kidney. So first thing that you need to understand is that the kidney actually, it is the organ that is found within the abdominal cavity, posteriorly to the peritoneal cavity. So you're saying that the kidney lie against the back muscles of the upper abdomen at about the level of the last thoracic and first three lumbar vertebrae. So this is where it is found, and it is according to the research shows that the kidney is about 12 centimeters long, 6 centimeters wide, and 3 centimeters thick its layer. So we're saying that the right kidney is slightly lower than it is with the left kidney, because in the right hypochondriac region, that's where you're going to find the liver. So in order to accommodate the liver, the right kidney is slightly lower. And each kidney is firmly enclosed in the membranous renal capsule, which is made up of the connective tissue of fibrous tissue, and also it has the protective layer of adipose capsule, and the outermost layer of the kidney, which is said to be the fascia made of the connective tissue, it anchors the kidney to the peritoneum and also the abdominal wall so as to maintain its integrity and also to secure its position. The kidney and the ureters, they lie posteriorly to the peritoneum, just like we have mentioned. That's why their description about the location, you're going to say that actually they are located retroperitoneal. Retro will mean behind the peritoneum. It's not inside that layer which surrounds the abdominal cavity, but actually behind it. So it is posteriorly to the peritoneal cavity, but in the abdominal cavity. So now let's move on to see the location of the kidney. Theoretically, we've talked about where the kidneys are found. So this is the diagram that is demonstrating what we have been talking about. So on top there, we can see a person who is giving us his back, and we can see that the right kidney is actually slightly lower than it is with the left kidney, because we talked about the accommodation of the liver. And if you've seen the description in the left hand side here, saying that the kidneys are lateral to the vertebral column, high on the body wall, under floating ribs. When you hear the term floating ribs, we are talking about the ribs that actually do not touches the sternum. They are actually attached to the vertebral column, but they are not attached to the sternum bone. These are the floating ribs. So if you can see closely, those are the kidneys that are shown internally, that are shown just under the ribs that we are talking about here. And lastly, we are saying that they are in retroperitoneal position. They are actually at the back or behind the peritoneal cavity. So the growth structures of the kidney, we've just talked about its location. First thing that you need to understand, if you are to cut the kidney longitudinally, you are going to see the layers of the kidney up to inside part of it. So first thing that you need to understand is that the kidney, it has the capsule, which is the outer layer of it. It also has the cortex, which is a reddish brown layer of tissue that lies just after the capsule. It also surrounds the kidney. And inside this cortex, you're going to find the renal medulla. The renal medulla, it is the innermost layer of the kidney, which consists of the renal pyramids. And there's also the hilum. The hilum, it is actually the concave medial border of the kidney, where those structures, the accessory structures that we talked about, they get entry into the kidney. We've got the renal pelvis, we've got the red blood cells. We've got the blood vessels, lymph vessels, and also the nerve tissues. They also enters the kidney through the hilum. We also have the renal pelvis. The renal pelvis is just a funnel shaped like structure, which actually acts as a receptacle of urine that is being formed from the kidney, and it propels its contents to the ureters. And we're going to see the structure in a diagrammatic form. So after you find we talked about the renal pyramids that are found in the medulla. So those renal pyramids, at the bottom part of it, it has an apex that we call the papilla. So this papilla, it has the minor calyces, which are just the passages of the tubules where actually urine forms through them. And these calyces, they get to converge and becomes the major calyces. When they become major calyces, they actually pass their urine into the renal pelvis to the ureters. So the calyces is just major. When it's one, we call it calyx, a major calyx or minor calyx. And we're saying that the walls of the renal pelvis actually contains all the smooth muscles. That's why it is under involuntary mechanism. And the peristalsis of the most smooth muscles originates in the pacemaker's cell wall. Cells in the walls of the calyces propels urine through the pelvis and ureters to the bladder. So we're saying that when the urine is actually detected in the calyces, or the calyces gets urine, they are going to initiate the propellation or the movement of this urine that is contained into the urinary, or rather the pelvis, so that it can be transported to the urinary bladder for temporary reservation. This is the diagrammatic visual aid that we have to demonstrate all those structures that we've been talking about. So here we can see the structure of the kidney. First, if we start on top to the right, you can see the renal cortex, that we said that the renal cortex, it is the outer layer of the kidney. And we can see the renal medulla, which has the pyramids structures that appears red inside it. And thirdly, we can see the renal capsule. Actually, the arrow is pointing the outer layer that is outside the renal cortex. And we've got the minor calyces that actually gets urine from the apex of the pyramids that converges and enlarge themselves and become the major calyces. We also have the renal column and the renal pyramids. These are the pyramids that we have been talking about now. And if you come to the left hand side of yours, to the right part of the kidney, we can see the renal papilla. So the renal papilla, it is just the apex of the pyramids where the minor calyces actually are joined into these pyramids. And we also have the renal artery, which takes blood inside the kidney, and the renal vein, which takes blood away from the kidney. And we've got the renal pelvis, which is the funnel-shaped structure, which actually acts as a receptacle of urine. And we've got the ureter, or the ureter here, that carries urine from the kidney to the bladder as a temporary reservoir of urine. The microscopic structure of the kidney. So now we are done with the kidney at large, but still we are under the kidney and we want to talk about its functional unit. So the functional unit of the kidney, it's called the nephron. And we are saying that each kidney consists of about 1 million functional units, which are these, the nephrons that we are talking about. And they've got the collecting tubules that actually, when the urine is produced, it is going to be transported through the collecting tubules to the renal pelvis up to where the urine reaches the bladder and exits from the body. So the collecting tubules transport urine through the pyramids to the renal pelvis, giving them their striped appearance, just like mentioned. And the tubules are supported by a small amount of connective tissues containing blood vessels on the nerve and also the lymph vessels. So now let's talk about this functional unity of the kidney, which is said to be the nephron. So in this case, we're saying that the nephron, it is the structure and the functional unity of the kidney. Remember, the primary function of the kidney is the excretion, or rather the maintenance of fluid volume through excreting the excess of fluid in form of urine. So urine, it is formed in the nephron as the structure of the kidney in this case. So I'm saying that each kidney is approximately having about 1 million of nephrons, just like we have already mentioned. And there are also associated structures like the blood vessels that actually takes the blood that is to be filtered in order to form urine. So each nephron has two portions. We've got what we call renal capsules and the renal tubule. So the renal capsule, or the renal capicle, it actually consists of the glomerulus and the Bowman capsule. The renal tubule consists of all those other structures that are contained in the rest part of the nephron. We are going to see the structure of the nephron, where you talk about the descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, distal convolution, proximal convolutions, and the likes. So this is the structure of the nephron that we are talking about in this case. So if you can see, let's try to enlarge it. This is the enlarged diagram that is actually showing the functional unity of the kidney. Okay, so if you closely look at this, to the left you can see what we have been saying. There's a glomerular capsule and also the Bowman capsule, the glomerulus and the glomerular capsule. So the glomerular capsule, it is also sometimes said to be the Bowman's capsule. That's one and the same thing. So this is the structure that actually makes up the first part of the nephron. And if you descend, you are going to see the related structure that actually makes up the nephron. There's the loop of Henle, which consists of a descending and ascending limb. We also have the proximal convolution, and we've got the distal convolution there, and we also have the collecting duct. So this is the diagram of the nephron that you need to know. And if at all you are asked to talk about the urinary formation with an aid of the nephron diagram, this is the nephron that you are required to draw in order to describe the formation of the urine. So before we can move on, if you can see properly, to the right, to the far right hand side of yours, you are going to see where it is demonstrated medulla, and the cortex. So there's also the dashed line that has been demonstrated on this diagram, which is showing that actually the loop of Henry, it is found within the medulla of the kidney. Then when you talk about these upper structures like the Bowman capsule, the convoluted areas, both proximal and distal convolutions, the collecting duct, they are actually in the cortex of the kidney, which is the outer part of the kidney. Not the outermost, but the outer part of the kidney. And here it is just talking about the series of blood vessels in the kidney. Remember, for the urine to be formed, the blood has to be filtered within the kidney. So now, blood will be coming from the renal artery. From renal artery up to the afferent arteriole. So this afferent arteriole, it is going to take blood into the glomerular. From the glomerular, blood is going to leave the glomerular into the efferent arteriole. From efferent arteriole, there will be capillary bed where the gaseous exchange is going to take place, where the blood is now going to get into the venules, from venules into the renal vein, and be excreted outside the body. So this is how it goes. So when we try to get back a bit, this is what we are talking about in terms of the series of the blood vessels. So from the left hand side here, we can see the afferent arteriole. So the afferent arteriole, blood is going to leave the glomerular to the efferent arteriole. From efferent arteriole, now the blood vessels are even getting to change the color to the capillary bed up to the venules. So this is it, how the process actually goes. Okay, so we can move on. So we're saying that the kidney is divided into two regions, just like we have already mentioned. There's a cortex and the medulla. And the renal cortex consists of, is the outer portion of the kidney, and the renal medulla, it is the inside part of the kidney, which consists of the loop of Henle. So we're saying that this medulla, it has the tubes. And these tubes are actually in the funnel shaped like structure that we've talked about, which is the tubes that takes the urine that is formed into the funnel shaped structure, which is the renal pelvis. So we're saying that the tubes that are formed in the medulla that passes at the apex of the pyramids, they are now those minor calyces that we were talking about. So from minor calyces to the major calyces up to outside the renal pyramids. So the tubes are found within the pyramids, the renal pyramids that we have demonstrated on the diagram. So we're saying that the tips of the pyramids point towards the renal pelvis, which is the receptacle of the urine, and at the end it gives its contents into the ureter. So we're saying that the curve-like extension of the renal pelvis surrounds the tips of the pyramids and collect the urine, and these extensions are called calyces. This has already been mentioned, and the urine that collects in the pelvis passes down the ureters to the bladder. All this information has been explained. So now we're saying that the juxtaglomerular apparatus, which monitors blood pressure and secretes renin, is formed from modified cells, the afferent arteriole and the ascending limb of the nephron loop. So this is just one of the functions of the kidney that we talked about, that it actually maintains blood pressure. It maintains blood pressure by the secretion of the renin. So this renin is secreted by the modified cells that secretes the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So you'll be asked, what is juxtaglomerular apparatus? You need to be able to actually describe what this apparatus is. It's actually just an apparatus that is secreted at the modified cells of the glomerula, so as to maintain the blood pressure. So now, having looked at all the information that we have assimilated, it is quite now enough for us to understand the three most functions of the kidney, which is the first one, it is the formation of urine. Secondly, the regulation of water balance and urine output. Thirdly, to talk about the regulation of electrolytes balance. So these are the things that you are going to concentrate much on. All that part we've talked about, the nephron and the likes, all those things are going to be described in details as we are looking at these points. So we are going to start with the urine formation. There are three processes that are involved in the urine formation. There's simple filtration, which is also known as the glomerular filtration. There's selective reabsorption, which can also be said to be tubular absorption, and there's also secretion, which can also be said to be tubular secretion. So simple filtration, if you've noticed when we are showing the diagram of the nephron, there's the glomerular capsule and the glomerula. That's where simple filtration takes place. Selective reabsorption takes place from the proximal convolution. Secretion takes place from the diastole convolution, and we are going to talk about more of this. Let's start with the glomerular filtration. So glomerular filtration, we're saying that this process, it actually begins at the glomerulus and in the glomerular capsule, just like we've mentioned, or the nephron. And the wall of the glomerular capillaries are sieve-like, which means they are permeable to the filtrate to pass through it. When the blood is passing through the glomerulus, it is actually able to seep, like the fluids that makes up the blood as a content are able to seep through this glomerula. That's why it is said to be sieve-like. It's more like a sieve, which actually permits the penetration of some soluble materials. So, like other capillaries, however, they are impermeable to large molecules like the blood cells, the proteins, and also components. They are going to remain. Other components are going to remain in the blood. So what we are saying, in as much as it allows some fluids to pass through this sieve-like structure, but there are also large molecules that cannot pass, like blood. That's why it is not normal to find the blood in the urine, because as this filtrate is being made here, it is actually the composition, the formation of urine that we are talking about. So get it in mind that we are talking about the formation of urine now at this point. So okay, we talked about this. So we're saying that the diameter or the afferent arteries, it is slightly larger, which actually enhances the high pressure of blood in the glomerulus, like it is with the efferent end. So the afferent end, it is just a part of the arteries that actually transport blood into the glomerulus. Then the efferent end is the blood arteries that carries blood from the glomerulus to the vesicular system. And after this happens, we are saying that the volume of filtrate that is going to be formed by each kidney or both kidney at the same time, it is going to be said the glomerular filtrate. Sometimes you'll be asked what is glomerular filtrate. In this case, glomerular filtrate rate, it is just the amount of fluid that is going to be formed by both kidneys in a given minute. So in a healthy person, it is said that each minute at least 125 mils of urine has to be filtered, or the fluids has to be filtered in a minute, which actually makes up about 180 liters in a day by both kidneys. So we're saying that most of the filtrate is reabsorbed with less than 1%. That is about 1 to 1.5 liters that is going to be excreted as urine. That's why you find that at least urine output, it has to be about 1.5 liters, because it means that other fluids that are filtered by the glomerular filtrate, by glomerular, it is going to be reabsorbed. So in this case, we've been talking about simple filtration. What did we say? Simple filtration, this is a situation whereby the fluids that, as the blood is passing through the glomerular filtrate, fluids are going to be filtered from the blood into the glomerular filtrate and being transported into the tubule that actually is attached to the glomerular capsule. So now, after the fluids have been filtered, we've got the fluids in the blood that contains some glucose, some sodium, and other electrolytes. There is a selective reabsorption that is going to take place at the proximal convolution. So we are saying that selective reabsorption is just a process whereby the composition and the volume of the glomerular filtrate is going to be altered in its passage. Instead of those substances that have been filtered continue running in the collecting tubule, you'll find that at the proximal convolution, there are some substances and other amount of fluid that is still needed in the blood that is going to be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream because of the diffusion that is going to take place between the tubule and the capillaries. That's why it is said to be convolution. This is the area whereby the tubule or the urinary system is going to convolute or to aggregate together with the blood capillaries and making the diffusion of substances easy to occur. So we're saying that active transport, it is carried out to carry out at carrier sites in the epithelial membrane using the chemical energy to transport substances against their concentration gradient. So what we are saying in this case, there are some substances that actually has to leave the tubule into the bloodstream. For example, let's talk about glucose. Glucose is not it doesn't need to be found in the urine. So now, to have glucose not to be found in the urine, it has to be reabsorbed into the bloodstream. So now, it requires energy for this glucose to move from the tubule into the capillaries or the blood vessels. Some constituents of the glomerular filtrate, like glucose, just like we have already mentioned, it gets to be reabsorbed at the proximal convolution and to actually maintain what is needed in the blood glucose level. So in this case, what it happens, glucose, there's a certain amount of glucose that has to be found in the blood. When that amount is reached, the kidney can no longer reabsorb what has been filtered. Hence, we've got the maximum amount of each and everything that can be reabsorbed. Even the fluids themselves, we've got a maximum amount that can be reabsorbed. So that maximum amount or capacity of reabsorption of substances within the tubules, it is what we call transport maximum or renal threshold. They will be asked, what is renal threshold? Renal threshold in this case, it is just an maximum amount or capacity that the kidney can reabsorb the filtered substances. So like the very glucose that we've talked about here, saying that, for example, the normal amount of glucose, let's say it is 2.5 to 5.3 millimoles per liter. This is just according to this reference. If the level of glucose rises above what is beyond normal, we are saying that glucose is going to appear in urine. Why? Because the kidney is not going to reabsorb everything, and this, it is going to show for the abnormality that actually there's the problem that is actually occurring in the body for the kidney to fail to get every amount of glucose, and this is seen in people with diabetic mellitus. So the other substances that gets to be absorbed rather than the glucose, we've got the amino acids, the sodium, the calcium, potassium, phosphate, and electrolyte. And some ions, for instance, sodium and chloride, can be absorbed by both active and passive mechanism depending on the site in the nephron. So they're saying that the transport maximum or the renal threshold of some substances, they varies according to body's need. Or what we are saying, if at all in the blood what we need is much, even the threshold, the renal threshold, is going to increase so as to try by all means to compensate the loss that is in the blood system. Hence, the substances that are going to be absorbed are going to be more than it is when the blood has all what it needs. Then it means that the other substances are not going to be reabsorbed. Then the last segment of the urine formation, it is secretion. So we're saying that the filtration occurs as the blood flows through the glomerulus, and the substances not required and foreign materials, e.g. drugs and drugs like penicillin and aspirin, may not be cleared from the blood at the glomerulus level due to the limited time that the blood remains in the glomerulus. So now, having that being the case, such substances are going to be cleared by secretion into the convoluted tubule and excreted from the body in the urine. Mostly this occurs at the diastole convolution. So we're saying that there are substances that may not be needed in the blood, but still they've not been filtered due to the fact of the limited time. So these substances are going to be excreted from the blood through secretion. And we've been given an example here. Like a tubular secretion of hydrogen ions is important in maintaining homeostasis of blood pH. So when this has not been done, whereby we've got large amount of hydrogen within the blood, then that hydrogen is going to be excreted at the diastole convolution through the process of secretion. So these are the three stages that are essential in the urine formation. So if you are to narrate or describe the urine formation with an aid of the nephron, you need to talk about the selective we start with the simple filtration or the glomerular filtration. You're going to talk about the selective reabsorption and also secretion. Then you are done with it. Remember, we talked about there are three major functions of the kidney, which is urine formation and also regulation of the water and urine output. So let's talk about the regulation of water and urine output as one of the functions of the kidney. How does the kidney actually helps in the regulation of water, which is osmoregulation? So we are saying that the balance between fluid intake and output is therefore controlled by the kidney. How? The minimum urinary output, that is the smallest volume required to excrete the body's waste products, is about 500 ml per day. So the range from 500 ml to 1.5 liters. So what we are saying, if at all there's excess fluids within the body, more than what the body demands, the amount of fluid is going to be excreted by the kidney so as to maintain homeostasis. This is going to be enhanced by the regulation of the hormones that are going to be produced. But in an instance whereby the amount of fluids that are actually needed in the body, it is low, the amount of fluid is low, and still the kidney function is going to continue taking place. But what is going to do, instead of excreting a lot of fluids, there's a excretion or rather secretion of an diuretic hormone from the posterior pituitary gland, which is going to regulate or minimize the production of urine so as to enhance or to increase the reabsorption of the fluid from the tubules into the bloodstream so that much of fluids cannot be lost. So we're saying that there's actually a close link between the posterior pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus in the brain just detects how much fluid is needed. When it detects that, when it finds that there are actually low levels of fluids within the body, it is going to stimulate the pituitary gland to produce the hormone ADH or the vasopressin, which is antidiuretic hormone, to minimize the production of urine. And we are saying that the sensory nerves in the hypothalamus detects the changes. Okay, this has been mentioned. This is what we've been talking about. And it is said to be the negative feedback mechanism, which actually controls the amount of fluid that is to be found or in the body. Okay, so having talked about how the regulation of water and urine output is done, the last function of the kidney was the regulation of electrolyte balance. That's the function of the kidney. How does it do so? So we're saying that there are actually several mechanisms that takes place in the maintenance of the electrolytes. And some of the electrolytes that we are going to talk about are sodium and the potassium concentration. Sodium, it is just one of the electrolytes that is essential in the extracellular fluid so as to maintain its volume. And also potassium, it is the most common intracellular cation. So we're saying that sodium is a normal consequence of urine, and the amount that is excreted is regulated by the hormone aldosterone, which is secreted by the adrenal cortex. Remember, the adrenal cortex, it is just the part of the kidney, and we're talking about how the kidney plays the function in the regulation of electrolytes. So we're saying that actually in the kidney there is aldosterone that is, when there's a reduced amount of sodium, that is going to be secreted, and when it is secreted it is going to actually enhance the absorption of the fluid. So fluid retention with the sodium, it is going to maintain the levels of the sodium. So the last point here is saying that the cells in the afferent arteriole of the nephron, which is at the glomerular site, they are going to secrete the enzyme renin by the sympathetic stimulation, and this renin, it is going to act on the plasma protein, which is the angiotensinogen, so as to convert it from to convert the angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, and this angiotensin 2, it is just the vasoconstrictor which also increases the blood pressure. So when the renin and the raised blood potassium levels, it is also going to stimulate the adrenal gland to secrete aldosterone. So when aldosterone is secreted, it is going to enhance the water reabsorption with the sodium itself. So this is going to increase the blood volume and also the increment in the levels of sodium. And this feedback mechanism, it is going to shut after the levels have been attained. So we have seen that actually the kidney actually plays the major role in the maintenance and regulation of the electrolytes. So I saying that when sodium reabsorption is increased, potassium excretion is also going to be increased, indirectly reducing the intracellular potassium, so as it to maintain its to maintain the homeostasis or within normal ranges of these electrolytes that we are talking about. So we're saying that mostly sodium gets to be excreted through sweat when there's conditions like pyrexia, which is just an increase in temperature, body temperature, where the person starts to sweat, when there's increment in the environment temperature, and also when the person is actually in the physical exercise. That's where the sodium can get to be excreted. But still, the kidney plays the major role in the regulation of these sodium levels within the body. So we're saying that normally the renal mechanism maintains the concentration of sodium and potassium within physiological limits, whereby where sodium is less, the kidney is going to produce antidiuretic hormone. Where we've got a lot, there's also going to be the production of diuretics or diuretic hormone, which is going to increase the excretion of sodium, and it is going to actually reduce the reabsorption of sodium. By so doing, it is going to maintain homeostasis. This is the end of today's lesson. We are going to continue looking at other structures of the urinary system, where we talk about the ureters, the urinary bladder, and also urethra. For today, we much concentrated on the kidney. We talked about where the kidneys are found. We talked about the structures of the kidney, of them containing the capsule, the adrenal, or rather the renal cortex, also the renal medulla with the pyramids that have got the papilla at the base of it, at the apex, and also we talked about the minor calyces, the major calyces that transports urine to the renal pelvis. So that's what we have been talking about. We also talked about the nephron as being the functional unity of the urinary system, and we also talked about the urine formation. And we said that under urine formation, we've got actually three processes that are involved. We've got the glomerular filtrate, we have the the selective reabsorption, and also secretion. So all these are the functions, or rather the processes that are involved in the urine formation as one function of the kidney. And we also talked about how the kidney actually works in the regulation of water balance, and also how the kidney works in the regulation of the electrolytes balance. Friends, thank you for your time and attention, and this is the end of today's lesson. Bye.